Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brendan Helzer with Evoke Bike. We got another Hagens Berman hitter coming in from the UK today, Ben Wiggins. He is a killer on the time trial bike, but also looking with some GC hopes down the road, but really LAX Olympics in 2028 on the track. I don't know what's in. I've said this before. What's in the water with Hagens Berman? These guys have such a good big picture view of things, and he obviously has some great mentors in his camp. We hit on so many topics of mindset, going in on training details, nutrition on the bike. Is it worth it to lose the kgs? More kgs? If you're watching the TDF, it's the 80 kilogram polka dot jersey is rolling pretty well. Mindset was huge. So yeah, Ben, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. He's heading off to a stage race tomorrow. I think he's going to have a lot more fans after this podcast. Everybody, good luck with your training and racing. We'll talk to you soon. See ya.
And so yeah, I've just been just trying. So I just come off the track, and then this week was last week, and this week has been kind of aerobic based. Just
Okay.
trying to build a base again for the second part of the road season. So yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk track, road, similarities, differences. And so before we get too deep, Ben Wiggins, give a quick intro. Who are you? Where are you calling us from? Who do you race for?
So yeah, I'm Ben Wiggins. I am calling from the UK, North England. So yeah, that's where I'm from, and I ride for Hagens Berman Jayco, which is the Jayco Alula development team, and I'm more famously, I think, Axel Merckx's team. We've had 50 Summit riders come through to go to the World Tour, so it's historically the best development team in the world. So yeah, it's that's who I am, and looking forward to
That's
talking.
super. Yeah, it's super exciting
Yeah,
to be a part of that. It's like if people look back at the history of that team, it is amazing what a hit squad it is and where people go. Just yeah, man, we're glad to tag you with that and see where you go. So
yeah,
let's jump into that. And this, I think a lot of people we see. I'm not a track cyclist, never been on the track, so we might see it in the Olympics. We see riders come over to the road from it. I think in the U.S. we see some guys going from the road to the track trying to make the Olympic team, but we don't always know that much about it. I know I was looking through some of your races, and it seems like you kind of hit a lot of it, like the points race, team pursuit, individual pursuit, Madison. Is there anything that you don't do on the track?
not really. No,
Okay.
I think once you, I mean, there's races I'd like to avoid. For example, the elimination race.
Okay.
But
Why is
there's either
that? Why
not.
is that?
Oh, it's just well, I mean, what bike race, do you want to? Well, I don't know. It's like it's just dangerous, It's like the last guy's out, so it's like everyone's just. It's one race where you just don't, you don't necessarily want to be at the front, which is weird, And it's yeah, I don't know. I can't actually answer that question too well for you, but it's very historically quite a dangerous race, a lot of crashing and stuff like that. But unfortunately, if you're doing an Omnium, you have to do the elimination race, which I don't mind. I can swallow one, but yeah,
You're not gunning
it's
for it.
not
Yeah.
it's not good for the nerves, no. But yeah, I think for the in terms of track, yeah, I'll do anything I'm asked to do. Really, I think team pursuit and points race and the Madison is my kind of three favorite events, and I'm lucky enough that I'm able to have a lot of opportunities to do those
And you're junior world champ in which event?
in the Madison. So
Madison. Okay, that's what I
yeah,
thought.
yeah,
So,
with
how do you describe yourself as a cyclist? Are you a track cyclist turn road? Are you both? Are you? How does that sit with you?
I think a lot of people just assume I'm a track cyclist, but I think nowadays more and more I just think you have to be so versatile and you can be everything nowadays. I think obviously a lot of my results have come on the track, but I've also had some really, really good road results. And I think long term, the road is where I see myself. But for sure, the LA Olympics is the goal for me on the track. I think it's the blue ribbon of it. It's for British cycling, like the track is huge, So, and obviously with my background, my dad was obviously a world class track rider, and I've I've grown up watching track cycling. So yeah, I mean, at the minute, I'd probably say it's a good mix, but yeah, I'd probably lean just to the road.
Okay. And in LA, I was trying to look which events are in the actual Olympics.
Yeah, so yeah,
They got rid of individual pursuit, right?
yeah, it's drastically like got smaller. They've had to get rid of a lot of events. With I think BMX was a new Olympic event in London.
Okay.
So and they actually see BMX as actually cycling. So they had that cut the event slots in half basically. So they had to get rid of a lot of the events. So now there's only Team Pursuit, Omnium, and the Madison.
Okay.
So, but still, I mean, Olympics is the Olympics, isn't it? I mean, you're gonna do what you can do.
So this is going to sound like a dumb question from someone who doesn't race on the track. Obviously, you wouldn't ask a road rider like, "Oh, are you going for the road race and the TT?" I mean, some guys yes, but some it's like that doesn't even make sense. Are you going for Team Pursuit, Omnium, and Madison, or do you have one that you're specifically targeting in LA?
I'd love to do the Team Pursuit and the Omnium. Team Pursuit and the Madison. Not the Omnium.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I do whatever I can, but that I'd love to. The Madison for me is like the ultimate cycling event.
Okay.
I think it's what I fell in love with. That's what's inspired me. Watching Madison's Team Pursuits as well. Just I think for me, I'd love to. And the fact that in a Madison you're doing it with someone else as well, and the Team Pursuit, you've got 3 other guys relying on you. They're 2 events that kind of sum up cycling as a whole. There's all the elements of cycling in a very condensed period of time. So obviously the Team Pursuit's only 4 minutes, and it incorporates everything. Teamwork, effort, and everything. So for me, that's the goal.
I do, man. When you say teamwork, I think that's probably underrated in a lot of people's minds. If someone hasn't done like a prologue TTT on the road, it's quite a different story when there are 4 guys going full gas and trying to ride as fast as possible together. It's the choreography together is incredible. I mean, yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, for sure. So I think. Sorry, I think.
No, you go.
With Team Pursuit, it's just like, cycling's a very traditionally, solo sport. It's ego driven and stuff like that. And with the Team Pursuit, all that goes out the window. And that's what I love about it, coming from other team sports as well that I played growing up. Like, that's what I learned to do, to work as a team. And that's just what I love about it. It's, you're going out to war with normally 3 of your best friends, because you spend so much time together to get it right. So that's what's so special about it.
So how will that work I've talked to a few guys that I know on the US track squad, and it's like, hey, how's the qualifying going? They're like, dude, it's so complicated. But if you're going to the Olympics and you're going to race Team Pursuit with 3 other people, how much time do you have to actually train with them before the team gets picked? Or are you like, these are my 3 boys, like, hopefully we all squad up together, but like, is there another team of 4 that's also trying to qualify, and then maybe it's a blend of the 2 teams? Or how does that shake out?
Well, I think traditionally in the UK, it's kind of the whole 4-year. It's a 4-year process from one games to the next. So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it gets more intense, and you kind of narrows down the guys closer and closer, but with the Commonwealth Games as well, we have that 2 years before the games. Normally, you kind of have a good idea of who's on form, who's kind of targeting that. And I think, I mean, I know this year there was probably 8 or 9 guys that were going, trying to get in the Team Pursuit squad for this year's Olympics. And it kind of just slowly narrowed down into the 5 that will be going. So.
Okay. So there's plenty of time to gel. It's not like you're throwing it together 2 months before. Okay. So training-wise, what's similar from the track to road? And actually, one other question that I don't know the answer, and for other listeners, how long is the Madison event in duration when you actually go do the race?
So the Madison is I think normally in the elite level, 200 laps of a 250 track. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it's 180, 200 in that range. So it normally take about, 200 laps is, sorry, how much is it? 200 laps is 50k.
50K.
So
Okay.
it would be about, 50 something minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what the
Well,
internet told me, but I was like, I better double fact check this before I drop that stat. People were like, bro,
yeah.
you have no idea what you're talking about. So we're going everything from 4 minute races to 50-minute races. How does the training, what do you think you've taken from the track and been able to apply to the road?
Quite a lot. I think, it kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, if you're a track rider, it's going to obviously it's going to translate to the road. You're kind of just natural raw watts power.
Hmm.
If you're a good track rider, you're a powerhouse. I think you see that with a lot of the good track riders that are also road riders. They're either good time trialists or good lead out men, good sprinters as well. I mean, obviously it's then hard to take it onto and then slim down and be 60 something kilos and do it on a climb. But I think the kind of natural base ability to do that is there. I think there's so much you can gain from the track. And I think I wouldn't say it's overlooked, but I think there's a lot. I think people don't always appreciate the things you can gain from the track. I know that some teams aren't too keen on you riding the track. But yeah, I mean, I think personally, what I take from the track is explosiveness and just kind of also for me, the ability to recover quick, in between efforts. So, if I'm going for the breakaway on the road and, I've say one move's gone, I've got to follow the counter move as well, because I get that from the track because it's so high intensity. There's always something going. I've kind of been able to train my body to be able to just keep going.
I feel like, yeah, I think the track is super overlooked. I wish it's something that just from not only bike skills, but that you're constantly going on the gas. There's no stopping. I mean, obviously you got to be able to drive to a track and have access to a track, but I wish I could just get into that to experience that more. Do you think you'll,
It
beyond the games, you'd mentioned like, hey, road's probably my go-to. Do you think you'll ever have to stop racing on the track at some point?
I hope I would never have to kind of stop. But I think there'll definitely be a point where I'll probably just put it aside for a while.
Mm.
I have my goals on the road and stuff like that. So I think, and also with the track, it's like, the Olympic Games is the kind of pinnacle. And I feel like once you've done that, I don't see myself trying to go and do it every time. I think there's other things I want to go and do. But I certainly see myself coming back to it. Definitely. I mean, it's my first kind of love of cycling, so I'll
Yeah.
never let it go completely. So
Cool. When we were talking about, you said, slim down to do this over the climbs. I'm sure you've seen the story of whoever was rocking the KOM jersey had put on 20 kgs and got stronger. Is that a thread that most track cyclists talk about? Like, oh, damn, if I go to the road, I got to lean up a lot? Or do you think that might change with just more raw power? What you had said about just track cyclists are megawatts. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you really have to lean down that much?
I think for me personally, I've definitely found that losing weight's helped me.
Okay.
Um, and this year especially, I've not ridden the track as much, and I focused on the road. And yeah, I've just kind of naturally slimmed down. But I've also there's been a few downsides to that as well. Like my sprint in particular has suffered because I didn't spend the winter on the track. So it's
Mm.
interesting. Like there's a lot of positives and kind of downsides to, maybe then focusing on the road. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, especially with, I think even, until 3 weeks ago, when all of a sudden you see this 80 kilo guy in the mountains jersey at the Tour, I don't think anyone would have ever thought that, putting on weight is better.
Right.
So I think it's really refreshing to see. It was really refreshing to see, actually, especially as a naturally kind of bigger guy. I was like, oh, okay, maybe you can do it. You know, it's not like, you know.
I think it's got to be tricky for you guys too, because you're only 19, so you're getting stronger and managing weight. So even if the kgs go down, your watts are probably still going up. So it's like just trying to find this perfect balance. And yeah, it's got to be tricky. What do you see any other downsides besides the sprint watts going down from losing a couple kgs, or however much you
Uh,
lost? Did you lose a lot? Did you lose a lot?
well, yeah, I mean, last year, so for as a junior, I think track was my primary kind of focus, you know, and I was 80 kilos,
Okay.
and now as of this morning, I'm 74. So,
Oh wow. Okay.
um, yeah, I mean, it's been a big kind of transition, and it's not necessarily something I've had to try too hard to do. I think it's just a combination of, you know, training more and just looking after myself, you know, what,
Mm.
you know, eating the right things and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I don't find that it's affected too much. Like my threshold's the same. I just think that I'm able to. It just it helps my endurance more than anything. And for sure, I think maybe I lost a bit of that snap, and
Mm.
explosiveness. But I think, you know, I'd have to. I think this winter, when I spend more time on the track again, I can train for that, then I don't see weight being too much of a factor. I think it's just literally having the time on the track, which has kind of lost that rather than the the weight loss, you know.
Right. When you mentioned like cleaning up the diet, eating right, what are some changes that you've made there in terms of nutrition that you can like when you said that, what was popping in your head?
Uh, I don't know. I think just, you know, just making the right choices. You know, it's hard to just kind of pinpoint one thing.
Mm.
But I noticed that, you know, climbing was a thing that I knew I had to improve on. Because, you know, where I see myself going, I want to, and the kind of, I want to be a GC guy one day. You know, I see that's how I
Mhm.
see with the strong time trial that I have. I think that that's the avenue I see myself going down. And I think that I was just like, right, you know, I need to kind of make some changes here and fully commit to this. And it was just terms of like eating right. You know, I didn't do any of the kind of normal thing that I think a lot of people think you need to do in like counting calories and stuff like that. I try to avoid that as much as I can, if I'm honest. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
just eating the right things. And one thing I did do was kind of just cut out snacking. So,
Mm.
you know, just to eat 3 times a day, and, you know, whether it makes a difference or not. I know insulin spikes and all that kind of stuff. I spoke to my coach about this in the beginning, and he kind of said that that was a reason, but whether it is or not, I don't know. I'm not clued up enough on the science, all that stuff. But
Mhm.
I think for me, the just main thing I did was try and just eliminate snacking and just making sure I'm eating enough at meal times and around training, you know. So
Mm.
that was the main kind of thing I did. Eating the right things, you know, just nutrient dense whole foods was the main thing I did, you know. And I've found that I'm able to still, you know, I can still have, you know, dessert after dinner, stuff like that, you know. And so, you know, keeping your life basically, you know. I don't think
Right.
you should have to eliminate everything. And I think that's what's kind of changed in cycling now. Like, I don't think it's as so like you have to cut out absolutely everything, you know, to lose weight. And I think we've seen that now with guys like Pogacar. Like, I think we saw it, we heard at the Giro that he'd had like, I don't know, I think he had a few drinks after one of the stages or something. And it's like, oh wow, like the guy who's just won the double is, you know, still drinking and winning.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think, you know, it's a lot kind of different to what it used to be. I remember certainly when my dad was trying to win the tour, it was like, no, I'm having nothing. No, you know. And I
Mhm.
think that's it's important as well to, you know, to keep elements of your life in, you know, otherwise you just kind of crack. So it's been quite basic changes that I've made, but I found it's been quite easy to maintain. So
Mm. That sounds huge. I mean, being able to maintain the changes as opposed to going on these like 3 month stints of something and then you're changing to something else. It's like, all right, what can I actually be consistent with over the long period of time? I think that's super smart. You've talked about GC and road goals that you have. being only 19, and you're obviously on, you'd only be on Hagen Bourbons until you're under 23. How do you make a timeline for these types of things with, you've got a goal of LA on the track, which is another 4 years away. Do you have like a 5-year, 10-year timeline, or do you take it more small steps at a time and just see how things unfold?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ambitious. That's the way, I've always been like that. And then obviously I always look ahead. I have ambitions of what I want to do when I have done when I retire, I think that's what drives me ultimately, being successful. So, yeah, for sure. I have a, kind of idea of where I want to be in 10 years. So, and I think, I'd like to kind of be a classics guy early, and just learn the ropes really and stuff like that, and just become a good solid pro, win some races, stuff like that, and then we'll see, I mean, maybe I won't become a GC guy, but I think the kind of rider I think I am, I think those long kind of threshold efforts suit me.
Mm-hmm.
So, it would make sense for me to kind of, if I can, lose however X amount of kilos and be able to do the watts per kilo required and stuff like that, then why not have a go? But I'm open to anything. If I can win a bike race, I could, then I'll go for it. So
yeah,
I mean, I'll see where it takes me.
What are the biggest ambitions right now as you're sitting here in 2024?
Well, short term, I think the goal for this season for me is to win the Wells TT under 23.
Okay.
It wasn't actually something I kind of thought I'd be able to do earlier in the year, as I was coming off a quite bad injury actually, and wasn't able to train until January. And I was kind of like, oh, it's my first year under 23. Let's just kind of tone down the goals a bit. Let's just go for some more modest ambitions. But I've just slowly been gaining confidence through the season. And I feel like I've got a massive fire inside of me now to make this second half of the season something, to remember. And the Worlds at the end of the year is definitely a big thing. And then I think as for most under 23s in the next kind of year or two, I want to be making the step up to World Tour. That's, I think it's a realistic goal for me. And I think it's, as for many under 23s, that is the goal. So that's definitely the kind of goal for the next year or so. So,
Cool.
But then, I mean, after that, as I said before, just, establishing myself as a pro and trying to win some races,
Cool. Is Giles Pidcock still your coach?
No, Giles. It's a bit of a misconception with Giles. Giles was my junior team manager. He was not the coach. But yeah, I mean, I saw where it came from, but so Giles just ran the junior team that I was on.
Okay.
And he was. I had a coach from British Cycling, Stuart Blunt. He's called. He's coached all the great British juniors, that you see in the peloton today. But yeah, Giles was a definitely huge part of where I am today. I wouldn't be here without his support at all.
What was, when you had the injury, what was your coach's mindset when I don't know if maybe you didn't have this conversation, but when you were thinking, hey, maybe I'll just tone these goals down a little bit, were they on board with that? Were they pushing you more, or how did you kind of find your footing with that?
Yeah, I think I'm quite lucky I'm quite lucky. So this year, because I moved up to under 23, obviously, and then obviously moved up onto the under 23 track program as well. So Matt Bramier is my coach now, and he was obviously a former pro, and I think he really helped me with kind of just taking it steady and slow. Realizing that coming back from injury is a process. You're going to have ups and downs, and I think having someone who's been through injuries himself as a pro and stuff like that, it was really helpful to me. I've never felt any kind of rush to obviously as well, mentally coming back from injury is very tough. And for me, he helped me massively with just stepping back, and life was the priority, rather than, training. So, but it was tough, don't get me wrong, but, he's been a really good balance of, getting the work done and understanding the struggles of coming back from injury, and it was really really helpful to me.
I love hearing that. Go in on that a little bit more, because I think as athletes, most people, if they have an injury, it's okay, how quickly can I get back? I'm missing out. I'm missing training. I'm missing events. My friends are doing this. My teammates are doing this. What were some of the things that Matt instilled in you, or maybe some like knowledge that you picked up along the way that you'd pass on to somebody as, okay, this is how I got through this? Because the mental thing that you brought up is so massive.
Yeah, I think just the main thing was just taking your time, It's going to affect you so much more in the long term if you don't do it properly. You can come back from injury, really fast, and it can actually make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people kind of lose sight of, what life actually matters, because there's so much to life outside of cycling. I think a lot of people lose that, even though it doesn't seem like it sometimes. I think that was kind of the important thing to kind of remember, and also kind of not take cycling for granted at the same time. You lose so much. All of a sudden you've lost your routine of training every day and stuff like that, and you're like, what do I do now? I've got to be a normal person. So it's tough mentally, and I think I wouldn't say it made it any easier, but it was kind of easier in a way because it was during the winter and there's obviously no racing going on. But it was tough losing, again, that's why I missed the winter on the track that I would have normally had, and it was tough, but Matt certainly helped me through it, was really supportive with everything, and I never felt any kind of pressure or crazy rush to try and get back. We had goals and ambitions of when I want to be back, but it was like, if we don't meet those, so be it. We'll just delay it a few weeks. And we were really conservative actually with the goals of coming back. We originally said, because I broke my elbow, that was what my injury was, and we originally said that maybe mid-January we can get back on the outside on the bike, but I was lucky enough to be able to knock a few weeks off that. We were just, there was no pressure with anything, and if I was to be a coach of someone going through something similar, that would be the main thing for me, just to make sure that everything's being done properly and there's no rush, and you're thinking long term rather than, I've got to get back for this time. That would be, I think it's just such a better way to go about it.
Cool, that's awesome. So you're going into the stage race. So is this kind of like mid-season, would you classify it as? Do you have a bunch of other things, like you probably don't know your whole schedule, but a probably busy finish to the summer into the fall? Like, is there anything you're trying to work on and improve on before, like, you get out of the stage race, and like things in your mind, like, man, I just got to get better at this? You've kind of talked about the climbing and for the TT aspect, but anything else just in terms of training?
I think for me, because I'm so young, first year under 23, I think you're just trying to improve everything you can as much as you can, so there's nothing really specifically I'm trying to work on. It's just trying to push everything as much as I can. And the main priority for me is just learning experience in the races. Like, these are some really, really big races I'm riding. I've been lucky enough to ride this year, and as well, I'm around fourth year on the 23s, and it's just who's done 4 years of this, and it's like I'm just trying to learn as much as I can from them. I have one teammate who I've become really good friends with, and he's helped me loads, and he's a fourth year, and just seeing what it takes, I think that's the main thing for me, just learning and just gaining as much knowledge and experience as I can. And I think, for this race, I don't know how I feel good, but it's one thing feeling good, but it's always how you stack up, and I think coming off the track, it'd be an interesting one for me, because it's always kind of goes one way or the other. I think last season, with the world's been in a very different place, so I came going into the Worlds last year, I came off the track Euros, and then like 2 weeks later was the Road Worlds. So I was you know, it was a bit of a question mark how I was going to go. I didn't really respond well in the road race, but in the TT then, where I got a silver medal, I found that it really helped me. So I think, I took a bit of a different approach to it this year. Obviously I want to try and go and win, but it's like, right, well, you know, looking at the bigger picture more so with, you know, races coming up. That's the main thing for me. I think just whatever happens next week, I'm going to come out a better rider. That's just how I see it, you know, and I'm going to be in a better position for the future races. So
you've got a good mindset of the big picture, man. It's like from injury to the races in itself. I love how you view this. It's interesting your comment on the road race. So do you feel, did you think more about that, of why you maybe didn't turn on for that race? Was it a travel thing? Was it just like a bad day? Was it maybe the track threw something off for the road race, or?
Maybe, yeah, I think so. I think because the track is just so intense, it's completely different. You know, you find, I think, I'm told you lose a lot of efficiency actually. So, and as well at a track event, you're not doing a lot of training. So over the week, it's like you'd race one day, then you'd maybe have a day off and then race again, and then 2 days off before your next race. So there's a lot of just kind of resting because it's so intense. And I think obviously your top end isn't going to suffer, but because you're just doing so much intensity. But I think in terms of efficiency and stuff like that, I can see why you would, you know, kind of go downhill in that aspect. And I think maybe that was, as well as because with it being my first Worlds, you got a lot of nervous energy and stuff like that. It was tough to kind of, you know, obviously you come in back to back on two huge events, you know, and it takes a lot out of you mentally and emotionally as well as physically. You know, I find that the track takes more out of me mentally than physically. I always find that I need to decompress for a few days, you know, after it to kind of reset and go again. And I've definitely learned so much from that experience last year. Probably did affect me, and it was a combination of a lot of things. The course didn't really suit me, stuff like that. But I think the main thing was kind of, you know, the preparation wasn't how I'd have fully liked it to be for the road race.
Cool. That's good, man. Those are some good insights. And all this track talk, I think you're going to inspire a lot of younger guys to be like, damn, maybe I should get a track bike and go check this out. It sounds amazing. So jumping backwards real quick, you were talking about some of the things that you've learned from the fourth year U23s. What are some things that jump out, some lessons that you've picked up already in your first year with the squad?
I think just, you know, I think first thing that comes to mind is probably just realizing that you have got 4 years, you know, it's not, you know, you haven't got to do it in the first year, because I think cycling is obviously just becoming so much younger and younger. You're seeing like Pogacar now, he's 25 and he's won 3 tours, and you know, Remco obviously burst on the scene out of junior. Good friend of mine, Josh Tarlin, obviously he's doing what he's doing. I think everyone just wants to do everything now and so young. But it's just remembering that everyone's development is so different, and you know, it could take you might have to build up all the training and stuff like that to get to that level, and which is fine. It's just accepting that, you know, and it's just everyone's on a different path, and that's just what I've kind of learned, you know. And there's also so many benefits to being a fourth year. You know, I've 2 guys that I've been lucky enough to be teammates this year, and I'm pretty certain they're going to be on the World Tour next year. So, and you know, they are kind of everything I'd want to be if I was a fourth year. You know, they're just I've learned so much from them. You know, just how to ride in the bunch, stuff like that. And like there was, you know, when I was riding for GB at the Nations Cups this year, one of my teammates, he was just so good at anticipating when kind of we'd be at the front and all of a sudden he'd want to move further up, but then 20 seconds later there'd be a big wave coming round and it's like, oh wow, we're still at the front and those guys are now 50 wheels back. And that was like one of the main things I've learned. I was like, you know, like just learning things like that, learning how to anticipate things. And also another thing that I think goes, you know, maybe people wouldn't expect is that learning that you've not always got to be at the front, and you've not always got to be taking risks and fighting to be at the front. I think that's also another thing that I've learned from those guys, that, you know, there are times to be at the front, and there's times where you can kind of, it's all right, well, we don't need to take so much risk here, you know, because it's that's what it is, you know, it's calculated risk. That's what everything is in cycling, you know. I think there's times when to take risks and times not to, and that's there's probably the two main things I've learned from those guys.
Those are amazing. Can you think of what is the time not to take that calculated risk of the energy expenditure to be up front?
I don't know. I think maybe, it's hard to kind of like, it's kind of hard to like, try to think, give me a minute. I think, it's just maybe with like, you don't know, you're at a point in the race, maybe it's like, maybe some guys would think, oh, there's a climb coming up or something like that, and you have to be at the front, but you end up using more energy to be at the front and stressing about being at the front rather than just sitting back. Or like, there's so many guys that try and, you know, they will absolutely finish themselves to move 10 spaces up. But it's like, you could just sit 10 spaces back, save your energy for the first bit of the climb, and then move up, you know? Mm-hmm. It's just the things like that. It's, and obviously there's times where you're fighting for the breakaway maybe, or, you know, fighting for a finish, stuff like that. Or maybe there's a corner that everyone knows about, and those are obviously the times you've got to be at the front. But there's a lot of times where it's kind of like the stress is high, but not for a lot of reason. I mean, it's really hard to explain, I think, that one. It's
good though, because it's like you're saying in a different way that calculated risk that you were talking about. So I think that's good. It like paints the picture even more. So no, I'm into that. As a track cyclist, I feel like I know the answer to this, but maybe not. In the gym, is it worth it or not worth it?
Well, I think I've never, until this year, I've never really spent too much time in the gym to do with on the bike.
Okay.
And I think, you know, it's obviously something that takes a little bit of time to see the benefits of, but it's something I'm going to be buying into even more this winter, because I think it is definitely super important. You know, if you're a strong cyclist, it's about being a complete athlete, I think, more than anything, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think definitely has its place for sure. I think it's just there's definitely times to do it though, and there's a right way to do it, and that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out before I kind of throw myself into something and then be like, oh, that's really affecting me on the bike. Because I know some people that have tried it and got it wrong, and it's kind of then been detrimental to their on-bike performance. But I definitely, for sure I will. I see so many guys that do it, you know, like when I started doing it, all of a sudden I realized that, wow, like Van der Poel does it, Van Aert does it. And I think the kind of question is whether you do it in season or not. I think everyone's kind of buying into doing it in the winter because it's just kind of like the general thing you do now, you know. But I think in season is definitely like the kind of question mark at the moment, I think. But I think seeing those guys do it, obviously, if you're gonna follow what the best in the world do, aren't you? So it's definitely something I've bought into. For sure.
Cool. Yeah, I was curious you being so young, I didn't know when people really started in the gym. So I was thinking maybe it's even age dependent. Like it might change as you get older. When you're 23, 24, maybe you lift more, maybe whatever. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where your path with that goes. Let's talk training, like get into that a little bit more and maybe this changes track versus road. I think that'll be the most interesting. Like if you talk about your training, what's the most bread and butter? How would you describe how you train?
Well, to be honest, I've never been someone who's kind of like very personally scientific about it. I kind of just do it. I do what I'm told to do.
Okay.
But I think, yeah, I mean, it's something I've kind of learned so much about, you know, and I'm still continuing to learn so much about. It's about learning what works for you as well, you know. I think obviously it depends on the time of year and stuff like that. When you're racing a lot, you're actually probably not doing too much training, but a lot of what I was doing was kind of suited to the rider I am, pushing. But I think the main thing this year that springs to mind the most is fatigue resistance and repeatability. I think as a junior, I kind of trained to hit these absolute max numbers that are super high, but you can only do them once. And I think that this year, especially, I probably can't quite hit those absolute peak numbers that I could last year. It's probably slightly lower, but I can do them 3, 4, 5 times now, which is obviously with racing for 4 or 5 hours instead of 3 hours in a junior race. It's super important to be able to, do it more than once. And I think that's some of the qualities you see with the best riders in the world now. How many times you see like Van der Poel, he normally attacks when the race has been super hard. And it doesn't mean it's any easier for him. He's just able to do it again, whereas I think some of the guys can't. And I think that's really important for me. And that's something I want to continue to work on,
Yeah, it's super smart. It's like, especially now with Strava being able to look on some of these one-day races, if people go in and look at the sheer volume of VO2 max plus time, it is like, holy crap, how did these guys even do that? And it's, just not just a one-off effort. It's the exact opposite. So yeah, man, it's super smart. Is there so when your coach lays everything out, are there any specific sessions that you see the most often, or said a different question would be ones that you love doing, like something super hard?
Yeah, I always find that I enjoy threshold sessions, But I think you're always going to enjoy things that you kind of are good at,
Yeah.
I think one thing I'm someone who trains to the demands of the event. So whatever I've got coming up, I'm going to try and train for that. I think that's kind of, I don't kind of do one thing for everything. It's going to change depending on the races coming up and stuff like that. And I think that's important to do when you're young, because obviously you still need to try and push everything. So I think maybe once I really pinpoint the rider I am, stuff like that, and maybe that'll change. But yeah, I think it's kind of, there's a lot of variety in my training, which I like. It's something different every time I get my training set, there's something new, which I really like, actually. So, but I think there's a few mainstays, like for example, my Matt does set me a lot of threshold stuff, but that's just kind of the rider I am. So I think that's quite important for me.
What are some of those sessions? Are they constant power? Are they over-unders? Are they something different?
Yeah, it's a mix, really.
Power, RPE, heart rate. Yeah, go in on that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. So, yeah, I mean, when I'm training specifically for time trials, we'll do more over-under stuff. Because that's what you're doing in a TT. You don't just ride at one power. Well, I certainly don't. I think maybe that could be a mistake some people make. I think that maybe they ride a time trial at one threshold power, but you have to. Over unders are obviously changing. We're going under and over and under threshold, and it's the same in a time trial. If you're going uphill, you need to press on more. If you're going downhill, maybe you can sit slightly under threshold, and I think that really benefits me. And then obviously, I think coming up, I've got some constant power threshold efforts, and it's hard to do around me. Actually, it's not a long climbs, so it's tough. But I think threshold is a weird one, because I think there's quite a lot of things you can do to kind of push it, and there's a lot of theories around it as how you actually get it up. There's obviously the old theory of sitting just under it and it bumps it up, or like maybe training at it and stuff like that. There's a lot of mix. There's a big mix of things you can do for threshold, I think. So, and I like that.
Yeah. What's the longest interval that Matt would give you, like duration wise, when you would mention there's not long climbs? Are we talking like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour?
So yeah, I mean around me, because I live in quite well, the UK, it's just hills, so we ain't got anything over 10 minutes, unfortunately. So I'd say yeah, probably 10 minutes. I mean, maybe on the TT bike, that I can recall, the longest kind of effort I've get, which isn't on the turbo, is 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I go, for example, I go to Girona for a couple of weeks in 2 or 3 weeks time.
Hmm.
Um, and there, yeah, I've seen my training for that, and it's kind of like different. I'm like, whoa, I'm not had to do like I've not seen this kind of length of interval for a while. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, it's I actually kind of prefer longer intervals to shorter ones. Kind of just makes time go faster. So,
Yeah. Get in the zone. And so the Girona ones, will those be like 20-minute plus?
yeah, so yeah, around that, yeah, I think so.
Cool.
I'm trying to think. I think the longest one I have is about 20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. And when I'm curious, when you prepare for the pursuit, because it's you and three other guys, do you have any specific sessions for that where it's like, I don't even really know how I would ride a pursuit. It's like full gas, but then it's not much recovery behind these guys because they're going full gas. Am I thinking of that correctly, or explain that for us?
Yeah, so I think the most of the training we do for pursuiting is just race efforts, to be honest.
Okay.
Kind of everything you do away from the track kind of supports everything else. So,
Mm,
you know, if obviously zone two, isn't it? So if you're doing 5 hours, it's going to benefit your endurance, you know, whatever you're doing. So I think when we're at the track and on the track, it's kind of just, you know, training to the pace that we want to ride in the race. Most of the time anyway. Obviously it differs based on the time of year and where we're all at, you know, physically and form wise. But most of the time it's all pretty full gas. So
mm. That intensity that you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, if you don't like going hard, you're not going to like the track, it sounds like. So,
no,
yeah.
no.
What's when you're on the road and you're doing like a, let's say, 4 hour road race, what's your nutrition choice? Maybe break it down by, do you like liquid carbs in the bottles? Do you do gels, solid food? How do you set up for race day?
Yeah, so the main thing for me is kind of how easy it is to eat. That's you know.
Mm,
Um, so in the race, I kind of with the team we use 6D Sports,
okay.
um, which Quick Step use, J Cola will use it, and they do these little fruit chews, are like Haribo sweets, and so I normally start with those early on in the race, and then the bottles have 80 grams of carbs in as well. So I find it nowadays, obviously they've got there's a lot of options now for more grams in the carbs in the bottles, more grams of
Mhm.
carbs in the bottles, and I think that's really useful, especially now as the grams per hour kind of is going higher and higher. And I think I saw the other day that Campenaerts in the Tour was on like 130 an hour towards the end of the stage, and I think with bottles are super useful now with 80, 90 grams just in the bottle.
Mhm.
And then obviously I think in some instances you only have to eat one other thing. And I
Mhm.
think, and that makes it a lot easier for me as someone that just wants to get something in very fast. And obviously gels and little chews are easy to do that. I think maybe earlier in a race, I'd maybe, depending on how hard it is, and, you know, I'd try and fit a bar or two in earlier in the race, you know, try and stick to some solid foods as well, because if you just piling on gels and things that are just going to turn to sugar as soon as it goes in your body, yeah, sometimes obviously your stomach ain't going to take that too well. So
Mhm.
just trying to, yeah, I mean, just trying to keep as much quick, solid energy in as often as possible is what I find works for me.
Cool. Any supplements that you use or anything like lotions, creams, anything like non-edible or anything else besides basic nutrition of food?
Yeah, so I kind of just I supplement for just the basic things like like fish oil. I think everyone takes omega-3s and stuff like that. Well, a lot of cyclists do. There's a new kind of multivitamin that has just come out that I've been lucky enough to have been offered to use. It's called Kings, and it's just kind of like everything that they've done a lot of research in what cyclists need and use, and you get a lot of your RDIs for everything, just for basic health, and then also for performance as well. So I've been lucky enough to try those and starting to see the benefits. So yeah, I mean, I'm not massive on supplementing, because I think that if you are the more nutritionally complete you are, you shouldn't really need to supplement. I think it should always be the priority to get everything you need from foods. I think that's the best way to go about it. But obviously, there's things that are harder to kind of get. So, and if you're on the move, traveling as much as we are, you're not always going to have like a boatload of choices when it comes to eating. So I think supplementing definitely helps me, but I'm not someone that's going to live by it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I've got a couple questions for you. Maybe it's even kind of like around mindset. I was reading an article and I can't remember if it was on either Huggins Berman website or BMC's, and you had used the term getting into race mode. And when I say race mode, what does that mean to you?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question, actually. I am someone who always performs best when I'm in a very specific frame of mind. And as a TT specialist, I think a lot of other time trial specialists would kind of relate to that. I find that, the higher the stakes, the better I am, the better the more. So all my best performances have been at huge races, and I think that's, as well as someone that's, grown up watching cycling and stuff like that, I find it very easy to get up for things like the Worlds, obviously, and stuff like that. I think, how would I define race mode though? I don't know. That's a tough one. It's hard to explain. I just get in my own little world. I think a lot of people, like my coaches and stuff, would say I'm probably not the nicest person to be around. When that is not like I'm horrible or anything, but like I'm just very focused on the task at hand when I'm in race mode, I'd say, and just getting in my own little world, focusing on what I need to do, and that is specifically for time trials, because it's only you can control what you do in a time trial. I don't think I've ever in a time trial worried about what my competitors are going to do, because they're going to do what they're going to do. I can't do anything about that. And, like, that's how I would just, that's the only way I can actually kind of explain race mode. I'm a bit lost for words because I don't know what to say.
No, it's good. I like the beat.
It's very personal to me, race mode could be completely different for someone else, Right. I think yeah.
Are you doing any like self-talk when you said I'm in my own little world, when they say 3, 2, 1, you take off? What are your thoughts? Are you thinking? You've probably already visualized yourself racing through the course, I would assume. You know the course. What kind of things are you telling yourself as the TT's unfolding? Let's say it's a 30-minute effort.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty bang on. I mean, visualization and manifestation is something I kind of practice quite regularly. I'd be lying if I'm on the line normally. I'm telling myself, it could, to some people it might sound a bit big-headed, but I'm telling myself I'm the best there. No one's beating me today, stuff like that. And people will think what they want about that, but that's just, why wouldn't you think you're the best? If you're not thinking that you're going to win the race, why are you showing up in the first place?
Yes.
especially for a goal, something I'm a big, I've trained for. I'm not going to train for it, and it wouldn't be a goal if I didn't want to win or do well, So for sure, I mean, but then in the kind of moments leading up to it, there's a lot of kind of all of a sudden the kind of just moments leading up to it. It's a weird kind of calmness to how I'm thinking. It's weird. It's like a really quick shift from, like kind of being angry and not angry, but like, this kind of like aggressive thing to kind of just, right, all the work's done. Let's just go and perform now,
That's awesome, man. I love that. And I don't think that comes across as big-headed, because the thing that I'll tell some athletes is, and this is more for like a road race, is if you haven't convinced yourself before the race starts that you can win, when things get really hard, if you're already thinking that, X, Y, and Z is faster than you, when you are pinned and they're attacking up the road, you're, that guy's faster than me. He deserves it. It's like you got to be convinced before that gun goes off that you deserve to win too. So I don't think it's
definitely.
big. It doesn't come across as big-headed, man. I think that's smart.
Yeah, I think as well, it applies to road racing. Like you just said, I always think confidence for me is a big thing, huge. However I'm going is massive,
Mm-hmm.
I think especially I've learned more, especially earlier on in the season when I was coming back from injury. When it got hard, it was very easy for me to doubt myself and think, like, it would be 500 meters to go over the top of the climb. I'd be like, do I want to make this effort? That I could be just 50 meters off the group, but it's like, there's always an element of doubt when your confidence isn't there. Mm-hmm. Whereas now, when I've got my confidence back, it's like, yeah, I can make that effort and I'll recover. I'll come back. I'll be ready. It's going to hurt. I'll come back. I'll recover. I'll be ready to go again. And that's just the biggest difference. I think confidence is 80%. The mental side of everything is 80%. Mm-hmm. I think we see that with so many riders, even I think that's what separates the best riders from people who, can't quite seem to get that win. I think we've seen with Wout and Jonas at this year's tour and Remco, they're not long off terrible, terrible injuries, and still Jonas has just finished second in the tour. I know Wout didn't win a stage, but he was incredibly close, and they're probably not on the best form to do that, or they're probably not on form to do that, but it's just their confidence and their mentality that has kind of driven them to get those. And I think it's the same for everyone, especially for me personally. I know it is for sure. So
yeah, that is huge. I think you mentioned in one of these articles when you won the first European title on the track, just saying my confidence grew, and I was like, okay, maybe I can be pretty damn good at this. So
yeah, and it's been the same this year. I think going up, I just turned junior then, and it was like there's when you go up a level, there's always a level of uncertainty of, oh, right, can I actually do this now? And I think for me, the thing I've learned from junior to under 23 is the level ain't so much higher, I'd say. It's just everyone is good. So as in a junior race, you've got 20, maybe 30 guys that can win the race, whereas under 23, everyone's riding for a World Tour development team. So it's like, obviously they can all win the race. And I think that's where confidence comes even more into it. And when I won that European title, I was like, everyone needs a moment where they realize they can do it. I think everybody, and when that comes or not is the question. But no one would get anywhere if they didn't realize they could do it. So, and for me, I think I had that this year at a few races where I'm like, I know I've not necessarily won anything this year yet, but there's been moments in races where I'm like, I did the lead out. I've done a few lead outs this year and no one can seem to come round me. And I'm like, wow, I can actually do this. I was second in the national TT this year on a course that historically I should have never got near. I shouldn't have been anywhere near the win. And I was second by 8 seconds on a very hilly course. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. If they take me the world, so I'm not letting that opportunity slip, so.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Capitalizing on the opportunities at hand. You even in the past couple minutes, the word learning is just seems like you are really trying to be a sponge and soak up as much as possible. And you've got, you had mentioned Giles, Tom's dad, Axel Merckx, obviously your father. What are some of the, I mean, you've dropped so many gems of things you've learned, but when you think of those guys that are probably you might look at as mentors, is there anything else that hasn't come up that you've just seen them do or that they've instilled in you, or maybe even things that they kind of have talked to you about that we don't hear about just as amateur cyclists? Or I think there's so much content out there about cycling and what to train, what not to train, this and that. But what are some of like maybe the soft skills or just things that you're trying to take with? And you might have been like, dude, I've already named them all, but does anything else come to mind?
Yeah, I think one thing actually, it's not actually too much to do with cycling, but Cav told me a couple of years ago, just always give people the time of day, because you never know who you're speaking to. I mean, I'm talking, this could apply to general life, but in cycling, like, you never know who's going to be your teammate. You never know who you're going to be riding for. You could want these people to, these people could be the difference between you winning a race and not. If they're one of them's your teammate, but if you've had a bad experience with them in the past, they're going to be like, I'm not riding with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just things like that. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind, kind of, and it's always stuck with me. I think, Cav actually is someone I've learned so much from. I've learned the most from him. I think, he's. I'm so lucky to be able to pick up the phone to not just him, but so many people, that are like icons of the sport, really. But for sure, Cav is like, I probably gained the most from him, which is weird because people kind of assume it's from my dad, but I think in a really good way, my dad just kind of leads me to it, And I think because the sport's changed so much from when he was riding, I think a lot of the opinions have changed. As I said before, about to do with nutrition and stuff like that. I think, obviously, for me, the main thing from my dad is just having the kind of presence rather than his presence is more important to me than any piece of advice he could give me. So, yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly lucky to be able to pick up the phone to some of the best riders to ever live, and there's so much advice I could,
you're like, I got a book here.
Right, literally, but there's so much, I get overwhelmed at questions like that because I'm just like, God, I don't know what to say. But like, I mean, but yeah, I think what I said about Cav, that was probably the main thing, and it's not necessarily to do with on the bike,
Mm-hmm.
That was just kind of, he's taught me so much about on the bike, like, how to kind of deal in bunch sprints, I think everyone, that's another thing actually, I'll give it on bike one because that was part of, that's kind of his what, but he is the calmest man in a bunch sprint. And I think you saw that in his stage win a couple of weeks ago. He, obviously, a bunch sprint is absolutely carnage, and I was cringing at some of the, watching the tour. It was like, it's horrible, everything's happening so fast, and obviously it would be so easy to kind of lose your concentration, and it's the most chaotic thing in any sport. I think, like, it's the last 5K of the Tour de France stage is the most chaotic period of time in any sport, I think, and the ability that he has to keep calm and just survey everything and just make all the right decisions. And in that stage he won a couple of weeks ago, if you watch the overhead of the last 5K, he does absolutely everything right. And I think that's what I learned from him as well. Just, not just in a bunch sprint situation, but to just pick your way through the bunch, even if it's 50K to go, 100K to go. If you're fighting for the break at the start of the race, just keep calm as much as you can. And I think that's the two things that kind of have learned from him, which I apply pretty much every time, every day.
That's awesome. I honestly, I love the first tip. I think that is gold to remember for all of us off the bike. And I'll keep it 100 with you. I've had a couple other people from Hagens Berman's on, and you guys, I don't know what's in the water over there, but you guys all have this really good head on, and we had connected on Instagram, and I was like, oh, this kid Ben seems like he'd be a cool cat to have on. And so I did a little research. I had no idea Brad was your dad, and I was like, they are related. Holy shit! Okay. So that was a funny moment of yesterday when I was doing some research. I'm like, okay, I'm glad I figured that out before I asked him if he had any relation. But dude, man, just as I said, you've got an awesome mindset about this sport. I think you're going to have a lot of people following you and rooting for you, not only this year, going to LA, see where your career goes. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat. My last question is always, we connect on Instagram, so we'll put your handle down there. Do you blog, tweet, TikTok, any other social media, or Strava? Where should people follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Strava. Instagram and Strava. It's just my name, so
Cool.
It's not too hard to find.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to stay off Twitter. It's not a great place, I don't think. Very toxic.
Yeah, you're probably smart.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Yeah,
Everybody,
I appreciate it as well. It's good.
Oh man, we appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a lot of things going on, especially leaving for the race tomorrow. So everybody, give him a follow on Instagram. Check him out on Strava. Big things coming. Thanks for your time, everybody. Good luck with your training, racing, and we'll talk to you soon.